Hey guys, Miss Corcoran here, and welcome to Intro to Photoshop. So today we are going to have a short crash course in basic edits of a portrait using Camera Raw and Photoshop. So you'll notice on my screen I have a bunch of image files in a folder. Now they are all labeled what the camera labeled them, and they are .cr2 files. Anytime you see an image file that is .cr2, that means that it is a raw image. Now the raw image is something that your camera will generate if you have it set to taking the picture in RAW. And it is basically a digital negative. It has the most information and is the truest image to the actual live view of what was happening at the time. So a JPEG is a compressed image, and you will end up losing information if you shoot in JPEG only. Now, other photographers have different opinions on that, but I personally always shoot in RAW. The other reason that I shoot in RAW is because when you double click to open the file, it will open in what we call Camera Raw. Camera Raw is the first stage of editing before you get to Photoshop. So it's giving you the option to change very basic things about the image, such as white balance, exposure, highlights, shadows, texture, sharpening. Now you can do all of those things in Photoshop, but using Camera Raw, it's more efficient. And we talk a lot about workflow and efficiency in this class, and that is very valuable. So we are looking for things that we can do efficiently. So I'm going to go ahead and expand my view. And the first thing is I'm going to just look at the image. I can zoom in. I can use my space bar to turn my cursor into a hand and zoom in on Angel. And I'm inspecting the image. I can see that the image is clear. It's in focus. It's pretty well lit. And the only thing that I would push on here is the color, the saturation, and maybe some other things in Photoshop that we will get to. So I'm going to go to white balance here, and I'm going to see what the computer thinks auto would look like. And I notice right away that that's too yellow. So I'm going to go back to as shot. And the tints I don't usually use too much, although I have heard photographers say that the tints can be really helpful. But if you do that, you have to use it really sparingly. You can see what a huge difference it makes. Okay. Then I'm going to skip the exposure and the contrast because that makes too big of a change too quickly. And I'm going to go more to highlights. And then I'm going to bring actually, maybe right there. So you're just looking at your image. And you can see the adjustments I'm making, not that much. And then I'm going to go to clarity. And I'm going to bring that up a bit. But I noticed that my shadows are too dark when I bring up my clarity. So then I'm going to go back to my shadows and bring my shadows back up. Then I'm going to go to vibrance, and I'm going to increase my vibrance. Now notice that I do not use saturation. Saturation is going to generate a very artificial looking photo, and vibrance is more natural. So I'm going to go here, and then I still see that this part is really dark in his hair. I try to bring up my shadows even more. Right about there. Okay. And then I'm going to skip the detail. This one I do use sometimes the sharpening if you have a little bit of just a fuzziness or a blur, but I just noticed that I have all the information I need. I really don't need to sharpen it. And then I'm going to click open. And when you say open, it will take you to Photoshop. Now, Adobe Photoshop lives on your dock as well. Remember, we dragged it to the dock earlier in the year. And it's the updated version, so you should have Adobe Photoshop 2023, and that is what's open right now. So this is your workspace. If you don't see a workspace that matches mine, go to Window, Workspace, and click on Photography. And you should have a workspace that looks like mine, and if you don't, please let me know. Okay, the first thing that I always do when I'm in Photoshop is I hit Command J, as in Jack in the Box, or Jello. Command J duplicates your layer. And in Photoshop, we use layers because we do what's called non-destructive editing. And non-destructive editing is when you can change your photo in a million different ways, but you have your original photo on the bottom. And if you turn your visibility on and off, you can see that you still have a perfectly intact original photo. And we do that because a lot of Photoshop is learning, and you have to kind of compare and contrast your edits before and after. That is one huge advantage that Photoshop has over a lot of different editing softwares, is that you can always see your before and after. Now, I know that there are social media platforms that do that too. I think, for example, if you edit in Instagram, you can hold your finger on the screen and it will show you the before, which is true. But Photoshop, again, just gives you way more control. So that is Command J. The next thing is I'm going to hit Z for zoom, and I'm going to zoom in on Angel. And again, the key commands are the same in Illustrator and Photoshop. A lot of them are the same. So the Z is for zoom, and then your space bar, hold it down, and you have your little cursor that can drag your image around like a hand. All right. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is levels. I like to use levels. The icon is called a histogram. A histogram is a graph of the lights over here on the right and the darks over here on the left in any photo. And you can see that mine is pretty well balanced, except it has really no bright whites anywhere. So what I'm going to do is click on my RGB drop-down menu, and I'm going to go one channel at a time, red, green, and blue. And when I do that, the histogram changes. You can see now it's measuring the reds and the range of dark and light reds. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my Option key down. Holding Option will turn your screen black, and what it does is you're just looking for little patches of red to come through. So right now I can see that's even blown out a little bit, so I'm going to actually just back that off. It's a little better. So you don't want anything that looks like what I call blown out. A lot of photographers will use that word, and the technical term is overexposed. So that was overexposed when I had my output slider all the way over here. So you can see how overexposed his face is now. So I'm going to bring that back down just to about there. Okay, now I'm going to go with my black output slider and bring that in a bit. And then I'm going to go to my green. And it is changing the color, but don't worry. When you change the blue, it will go back to normal. And we're going to bring that all the way in. All the way in there. All right. So now I'm going to look at my before and my after. My before and my after. And I think that really has made the range of values much better. And when your range of values is really wide, it helps the photo look really three-dimensional and bring it to life a lot. It really helps it look less flat. Okay. Sometimes I use curves and sometimes I don't. I'm going to show you how to use it, and then you guys can see which one will work for you. So I'm going to go to my curves, and again, one channel at a time. Now this is a a bar that you can drag. And what you're looking for with curves is you're creating a very slight S curve. So I'm going to bring that one up, and then I'm going to bring this one down. And you can see the S curve is happening here. Up and down. And then finally the blue. Up and down. Before and after. I don't know how I feel about that. Okay, I like the jacket. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you something very cool and important. Photoshop gives you layers, and with each layer, for the most part, it will add a mask. A mask is this little white square that you see right here. And a mask gives you the power to erase part of your edit in part of the picture. So not the whole thing. So usually, like for example, if you're editing in, let's say, Instagram, again, this example comes to my head, you have really, there's no selective edits. So you have to edit the whole picture at one time. You can't just say like, oh, I want to make the eyes brighter. So in Photoshop, selective edits are always possible. So you're going to click on your mask. You can see it's selected by your little registration marks or the frame around it. And then you can hit B for brush, or you can go click on your paintbrush over here. And again, if you hover over, you can see an animated GIF of what it does. That one is not really that informative. It's just a paintbrush. And then make sure down here that your black is on top. And I'm going to make my brush bigger. And now I'm going to make sure my opacity is 100%. And what I'm doing is I'm taking out my edit of the curves on just Angel's face, because I didn't like it on his face. I just liked it on the jacket. Now you might think that's really subtle of a difference, but we get to be very particular as photographers and make your image exactly as you want it. Okay, now I'm going to say before and after. And you notice that there is a change, but his face isn't changing because I've masked out that part of the edit. I'm actually going to do even more over here. You know, and before the jacket was like, I felt like you had a lot more information in here in like the midtones, but it wasn't as rich of a blue. So I prefer this one. Okay. So that is that in Photoshop. Now the last thing that I'm going to do, there's lots of ways that you can fix the skin tone too. So I'm going to go back to my layer, my photo layer. If you're on an adjustment layer, it's not going to change what I'm about to do here. You have to make sure you're on the picture layer. Z, I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to go, and I'm just going to fix up some of the blemishes that are on his face. Super easy to do. So over here, you are going to go to the spot healing brush tool, or you can just hit the letter J. So it says removes marks and blemishes. Oh, perfect. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm just simply going to click on his each one of these little blemishes. And I'm not going to do too much. And you can see up here on your options, content aware, create texture, or proximity match. Don't worry about these for now. We will get into that later. Just make sure that it's set to content aware for now. Okay. Good. And remember, I'm not trying to make him look overly photoshopped. He's a human being, and skin naturally has texture. And I really want to leave as much of his face naturally preserved as possible. But you can see that if I turn this one off, you can see the blemishes are back, and now the blemishes are kind of removed, okay? It just depends on how much you want to edit there, okay? The last thing that I'm going to do today, I'm going to hit Z again, zoom in, and I'm going to just brighten up his eyes. Now his eyes are a beautiful color, and I want to bring out their natural beautiful qualities. So I'm going to hit my dodge tool, and you can watch this one right away. You see, oh, it lightens areas in an image. It sure does, but if you use it on the eyes, it also actually brings out the color. So I'm going to click my dodge, and then I'm going to see my settings up here. Okay, exposure 83. Maybe I'm going to bring that down a little bit. Using dodge for many years, I know that it to be a powerful tool, and I like to go low and slow. And then I'm going to click, make my brush maybe a little bigger. And you can see not only is it lightening, but it's also really nicely increasing the just the natural richness of his eyes. Really beautiful. Don't do it too much. And there you go. So before and after. And that is basic edits in Photoshop.